And I have three main messages for you. The first message is, facing autocratization worldwide, democracy promotion becomes more and more relevant, and strategies need to comprise both support and protection of democracy. The second message is, total democracy had an average positive effect on the quality of democracy since 2010. So this is basically good news. It seems to work. Message 3, as ODA reinforces domestic processes in partner countries, and this includes autocratization, a do no democratic harm principle is key for development policy. And it's very important to motivate democracy aid because it has become very contested in the on the international level, but also governments and some civil society members, etc., are contesting it for different reasons. So it's really important to have a good narrative and how to motivate it. And there are mainly three key elements that motivate democracy aid. The first one is an intrinsic one. So democracy is a value in itself. And in the words of Amartya Sen, political freedom is a part of human freedom in general. The second motif is very important, and that's an instrumental one. So democracy here is a means to achieve more development, more sustainable development. We have more and more empirical evidence that democracy performs better on the long run with regard to development outcomes. And when I say development outcomes, I give you one example here. It's a UNDP Oslo Governance Center report that we together at DIE back then, that we published together with UNDP on democratic institutions and the reduction of poverty and inequality. And we show the more democratic, the better the performance with regard to poverty, reducing poverty and inequality. And then there's a third element, which is solidarity. And that is more recent. And that is not only state to state, but transnational. Because in the face, or when facing autocratization, and nowadays autocratization is often driven by governments that use legal means to autocratize their countries and make them less democratic, and people stand up for it. So it's a matter of solidarity that people between countries transnationally strive for democracies, and that's another motivation. Maybe not the strongest one for development cooperation, but still it legitimizes the support to civil society. It is clear that effectiveness of democracy aid depends on the capability of donors to identify and engage with relevant domestic processes, because no donor alone can support democracy, right? It's the domestic processes that are key here. So for democracy aid, what we know most is about democracy support in electoral democracies and liberal democracies. And we know that it works there best because democracy aid reinforces the processes that are underway. And that is what donors did during the last 2 decades. But now more and more engagement can be seen in electoral autocracies, but we don't know as much here how democracy protection works. Here it's just important to see that democracy promotion is not only about cooperation, but also about diplomacy and also some diplomatic pressure in cases of autocratization. What is important for democracy aid is that we have direct forms to support democratic institutions and actors, and indirect forms to support the structures that enable democracy. And in the direct form, and this is key then for my last point, we have an explicit and implicit democracy aid. So the explicit democracy aid is to support the institutions and actors, but then the implicit one is to use sectors like water, health, to indirectly, implicitly support democracy in these sectors. In a nutshell, the theories of change are still poor, and we need to improve the theories of change to make democracy support and protection more effective in the future. And one key issue here is that democracy promoters and donors are always intermediaries that are part of the political process, right? So, but they're not part of the evaluation. That's another issue here. Let me just make this last point here, because this is really, really key. And this is what many OECD donors in the OECD are thinking about at the moment, that there should be a do no democratic harm principle. Because what we know is that ODA in total contributes to the stability of a regime. And it also contributes to the processes underway. So ODA potentially contributes to autocratization. At the same time, we know that an increasing amount of ODA, and the majority, goes to autocracies. That's an OECD report of 2022. Democracy aid, in turn, is a very small part of the overall aid of a donor. So it might be that the effects of this overall aid overrule the effects of democracy aid.